Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I hope you enjoyed last week's video about why being a good fisherman can lead to being a good veterinarian. We're going to continue along those lines of discussing veterinary medicine in everyday topics and situations. Today's going to be a little bit different, a little bit more controversial, but we're going to be talking about 3 ways that we may be neglecting our pets. The things I'm going to talk about today can sometimes feel divisive or may make you upset. If anything I say upsets you in any way, I do apologize, but what I will try to do is, if I present you with a problem, I'll try to give you with a few solutions or things that you can try at home to change up in your pet's life. For the record, I am in no way saying if you fall into one or more of these categories with your pets that you need to rehome them or get rid of them. That's not what I'm promoting and not what I'm pushing. I just simply want you to acknowledge that there may be some areas or gaps in our care with our pets that are relatively common. So don't feel like you're a terrible owner. Like I said, if I give a problem, I'll try to give a couple solutions or different things that you can try to help enrich your pet's life and make it that much better. So the first way that I see that people may be neglecting their pet is when it comes to obesity. Obesity, especially here in the United States when it comes to pets, is extremely common. I know you've probably heard it at the vet, maybe that your pet is overweight or they have a high body condition score. For a majority of our animals, they have what are known as body condition scores. These vary between some of the species with the numbers. I believe normally dogs and cats it's 1 to 9. Sometimes they do go from 1 to 5 as well. What these basically are assessing is the animal's body weight and overall condition. What we would consider over-conditioned animals are on the higher end of the scale, or under-conditioned animals are on the lower sections of the scale. Now we're going to be talking about over-conditioned animals because that tends to be more common just because of how we tend to keep our pets, especially here in the United States. So first off, if you have noticed on your pet's vet bill or vet, like the diagnosis section, if you do notice that your pet does have a body condition score above 5, so that 1 to 9 range, they are above that 5, which we do consider to be ideal. I encourage you to go ahead and look up the body condition score. I will go ahead and provide images as well, and go ahead and read through what those different categories look like. For starters, when we talk about nutrition, especially in vet school, one of the things that we are taught is that nutrition can be incredibly divisive. And the reason for that is a lot of times when veterinarians are addressing concerns regarding a pet, a lot of times the owners will take it personally. They think if you're talking about and saying that their pet is overweight, you're saying that the owner is overweight. And they don't always correlate. If you are the client and you are at the vet and your vet is trying to tell you that your pet is overweight, please do your best to not take it personally. It's not a direct attack on you. They simply do want your animal to be in the best condition that they can. Most of the reason for this is because having a pet that is overweight, specifically obese, does have lasting health impacts. Some of those being joint issues, cardiac health issues, skin and coat issues, and they do tend to have sometimes shorter lifespans in the long run because of the excess weight throughout their bodies. So please note that if your pet has been given this diagnosis or the vet has recommended you try other things, it is not an attack on you. They just, once again, simply want what's best for your pet. Some things that are really common that I've seen in clinic is oftentimes owners will give their animals table scraps. We've all done it. I have a dog too, and I give her things because she looks at me with those cute little eyes. But if this is you and you tend to notice that you do end up giving your pet a lot from your plate, maybe you can try some other food options that are human food options where you can still give typically your dog, but sometimes your cat, you can still give them little tastes and little tastes while not significantly adding to that calorie score. For dogs, a really great option is different types of fruits or vegetables. Please Google anything that you're going to give your pet to make sure that it is not toxic. For example, dogs, grapes are incredibly toxic, so don't give those. But I recommend doing things like cut up carrots, maybe some squash. Watermelon is a great option, and they do tend to love to grab them and crunch on them, and they do end up becoming really rewarding treats. For cats, they are purely carnivorous, so you can't go ahead and provide any of those things. But if you do want to give your cat some things from your table, maybe you can go ahead and boil some chicken, shred it up a little bit, and give them a few pieces. That will allow them to eat some fun things while not significantly adding to their calorie load. Another thing to note is if you are providing your pet with a lot of treats, you may want to go ahead and cut back a little bit on their regular food. That way it helps to balance things out a little bit. Also, varying your pet's diet within reason so that they don't get tummy issues or, diarrhea, upset stomach can be a really good option too. It makes it more fun for you and your pet to engage in mealtime, and they don't feel the need to super crave for other snacks, even though anyone who has a dog knows that that typically doesn't work. Lastly, if you are having an issue with getting your pet to go ahead and cut down on weight, you can go ahead and try weight management diets. Go ahead and speak to your veterinarian about this. This will help them to eat still kind of the regular amounts of food, but they do have less calories in them. You could also try things like slow feeders as well to kind of vary how much time they're spent eating and allow them to eat slower, which will preoccupy them for longer. This can help them to do more to go ahead and get that food as well. Things like hideaway treats, like hide treats and toys, make them really work for that food, can help them to cut down on the pure just calorie intake. So hopefully those are a few good suggestions. If you are getting that recommendation for your veterinarian, please do try to correct this in your pet's life. It's going to be really hard for them because they won't fully understand why, but it can be and will be very beneficial for them in the long term. So the second way that pets are commonly neglected within our homes would be lack of enrichment items. This is one of the categories that our dogs and our cats tend to fall away from, because simply if you go to the pet store, there's always a new type of toy being released, there's always a new type of treat being released, and they tend to be very well rounded in activities that they get to do with their owners and by themselves to keep their brains active throughout the day. When it comes to our small pocket pets though and other exotics, this does tend to fall a bit on the wayside of providing your animal with new and interesting sights and smells to keep their brains active when they are awake. So for example, with small rodents, a lot of times people don't understand that they do need constant wood chews and different types of wood chews, not only to keep their teeth trimmed down, but also to keep them mentally engaged. They need a sand bath to be able to, roll around and express those natural behaviors. It's good for their health as well. And sometimes it is good to provide them with different types of edible food choices that they can try. Once again, please Google anything. I don't want your animals getting sick. But those are ways that you can maybe help to alleviate it. But the simple KT Critter Trail cage that's too small with not enough bedding and no toys for enrichment is not a suitable life for your rodents. So if that's you, or that sounds like someone you know, please recommend to them that they can go directly to the pet store, and there are tons of toy and little treat options that they can try to give that animal more engagement, because they do deserve it, and they do tend to just go a little crazy sitting in a tiny box with nothing to do. For our reptile friends, most people think that reptiles do not need enrichment at all, and I don't find that to be the case. Most reptiles do like to live and in the wild live an active and engaging life, and we should try to replicate that here in captivity. Some ways to do that, again, are different food items. Most people feed the same thing all the time on a set schedule. It's got dusted, it's whatever, it's good food and good nutrition, but if you're not going to provide a little bit of a variety. Like a lot of people I see feed their lizards, their insectivorous lizards, mealworms and just mealworms, and they put them in a dish and they say, okay, here's your food. Well, that's okay, and you can do that. I know life gets busy. It is really rewarding to go ahead and maybe get some animals or some insects for them to hunt. A really common one would be crickets, or sometimes dubia roaches if you don't have a substrate that they can burrow into right away. Additionally, tongue feeding. Tongue feeding can be a really good way to not only enrich your pet's life by making them go to different areas of their enclosure, but it also can build trust with your animal. They'll see you, they'll correlate you with their dinner time, and it can help them kind of come out of their shell if they're a little more shy. I do that with some of my species that don't really enjoy human interaction too much. For reptiles, they don't really have toys per se. It kind of does vary with species. I do know some tortoises that you can shove like hay into and they can push it around and go ahead and get their food out of the little balls, and I really do recommend those. Tortoises, even though they're considered like slow-moving animals, they do need to get their exercise and their enrichment as well. For some of the species, not all, it is good if you have the chance and the ability to do it safely to let your reptile go outside. For example, my tortoises in the summertime get access to a fully fenced-in protected garden, so they can go outside for days at a time. I bring them in to make sure they're eating properly, make sure to soak them if they need a soak. But this allows them to get that natural air, natural sunlight. They get different sights, smells, obviously exposed to so many different things. It can be dangerous, so just once again make sure there are predators in your backyard. They can potentially get caught up and hurt themselves, so just make sure that the area is fully safe and sealed off. But that is a great way to get them something that I think is absolutely required for turtle species, which is that natural sunlight. Some bigger lizards, you can do this as well. Things like if you have a Reptibreeze screening cage, you can use it for chameleons. You can take out your big monitor lizards if they're friendly enough and will let you move them around with ease. I wouldn't recommend it for your crepuscular and nocturnal animals, the ones that are awake at night. They might not benefit from it as much, and we'll actually go into why that would be a super negative in the next section, but that's a great way to get reptiles enriched in their everyday life. The last point for reptiles, again, is you can provide them with different types of substrates and different textures. Something that I have done in the past is I have snakes and lizards. The lizards typically will eat their shed, so I don't have any, but for my snakes, they'll shed in one piece, and sometimes I will go ahead and I will put that in my lizard's enclosure. Granted, I know that my animals are healthy, I know that they're not going to pass any pathogens between each other, so that's very important as well. But it does give them a chance to smell something different. It is more of a scary enrichment for them, because snakes would be kind of scary. I don't leave it in there long term or anything, but it's just something that they can look at, investigate. It's not a snake, so they're not going to get harmed in any way, but you can try something like that. Things like slate, different rocks, cork bark, different surfaces, those can all provide those different types of textures and provide different areas. For bearded dragons, sometimes people are putting in little bins with different types of digging substrates so they can dig. I like that as well, just to give them different things to interact with throughout their day, because it is really important. Lastly, I will address birds, because birds are another one who I feel get sometimes left by the wayside when it comes to enrichment, which in my opinion, there isn't really an excuse for this, because there are companies dedicated to sending you bird treats and toys every month so that your bird can experience something new. Maybe you don't know about those. I encourage you to look them up and get it from a reputable company. But same thing with rodents. Birds should be getting toys that they can basically destroy. If you are having toys in your bird's cage and they're the same and they have been there for years, that's not a sufficient toy for your bird. Your bird should be able to take something natural. A lot of them are made of natural woods with natural dyes. so nothing that would be harmful to them, and basically rip them apart. Shred them, pull things out of them. People use them as foraging toys, so they'll hide bits of food in them or treats. They pull them apart, and it gets them to use their brains and use their time to do something in their cage, as opposed to screaming or, surfing on the bars or doing anything like that. This gives them something to actually do. So make sure that your birds are really receiving that enrichment from their toys. You also want to make sure that maybe they're getting a little bit of a varied diet. 9 times out of 10, the seed-only diet is not appropriate for pretty much almost any bird, so making sure that they're on a high-quality pellet as well as a good quality mash, and I think there are some varying recipes for the mash, whether it's time of year, stage of life, different things like that. Making sure that you are implementing those things so that your bird is having just different textures, tastes, colors, all types of different things so that they can get out and explore different items and objects. Lastly, for birds, you can go ahead and teach them outside of the cage time tricks and tips. It doesn't work with all birds. Your small birds particularly don't love this too much, but some can be tamed down. So for your bigger birds, people often do flight training with them, do trick training with them, basic obedience tricks with them, and even good skills to have at the vet, such as stepping up onto a scale, stepping onto a hand, stepping back off of a hand onto an object. All of these would be good things that you can go ahead and work with your bird on sometime in your crazy busy life. So those are ways to help birds because they really do need good enrichment. The last way that people often are neglecting their pets would be disruption of the pet's natural sleep cycle. I feel like I don't hear people talking about this enough, especially veterinarians. I feel like I've never heard a veterinarian talk at all about making sure that your animal is getting enough good quality sleep. Dogs and cats specifically, they're gonna get their sleep, they're gonna do their own thing, so I'm not too worried about them. I know that as those pets age, their sleeping habits tend to change, and that's something that owners typically will make note of, so that's very interesting. But a lot of times with our small pets, again, we see a lot of issues where owners are waking up their nocturnal or crepuscular animals, they're keeping their diurnal, which is active during the day, animals up way too late, and they really do suffer for it. So this is something that if you are doing or you think you might be doing, maybe read up on the species that you have and see when their active hours are, and do try to fit that into your schedule. Let me give you some examples of some ways that could go wrong, about people do this in the wrong way, and ways you can maybe fix it. The most common example that I've seen is they have a crepuscular lizard, so a leopard gecko would be what I'm thinking right off the top of my head, or even a nocturnal lizard or other animal like snake, and you want to feed it, so you're going to go ahead and feed it at like 4 o'clock if you come home from work then, or even 6 o'clock when you come home from work. Well, I know you want to get your tasks out of the way so that you can wind down and go to bed so you can get up and go to work. Sometimes it is more beneficial to push back feeding these animals till a little bit later. It doesn't have to be like 12 o'clock at night. It can be like 9:30 or 10, so that they can go ahead and wake themselves up naturally, as opposed to you having to go in and wake them up for food. Because oftentimes an animal that is woken up out of sleep might not necessarily want to eat right away. For me personally, I have a green tree python. She sleeps her day away, and when I feed her, which is on Thursdays, I do wait to feed her. I wait till she wakes up and comes down from one of her perch onto one of her other perches closest to the cage door. That will tell me that she's ready, she's out, she's looking for food, she wants to go ahead and eat. So I'm not disturbing her sleep cycle by going in and saying, well, I'm home and you're gonna eat, because I guarantee you she wouldn't eat. She would just bite it and drop it, which is not good. Same thing with where we place our cages. Hamsters are, I want to say, more on the nocturnal side. I've heard people say they're more crepuscular to nocturnal, but nocturnal is what I've seen most people saying. And a lot of people want to put these like hamster cages and rodent cages in their child's bedroom. The hamsters, to go back on enrichment for a second, they need wheels, okay? Your hamster needs an appropriately sized wheel. It shouldn't be tiny this big. It should be big enough that they don't arch their back and they could run, because they're going to run on them, and they're going to run on them at night. Because of this, and the wheels typically make squeak noises or they just make mechanical noises, parents will often remove the wheel from the tank because it's in the child's bedroom, and that is not appropriate. Your pet needs to be able to exhibit natural behaviors. For hamsters, running on the wheel, even though it's not natural that they run on a wheel, it is natural that they do run. So they need to be able to exhibit those behaviors and get that fulfillment from their life, and they can't do that if when they are awake and have optimal time to be doing something, it's not optimal for your family. So the same idea applies to keeping pets in family-oriented areas, especially pets that are nocturnal. We use our rodent example. Maybe you have the rodent cage in a family room with a TV and video games, and that's where the kids hang out after school. This also probably wouldn't be a good idea because the pet's going to end up being woken up periodically. They can get used to things like this, but flashing lights from TVs, kids screaming, is not ideal for a good, consistent sleep schedule, just as it wouldn't be for you if you were trying to sleep. This can lead to issues of like behavioral issues and stress. So if the kid does go to interact with this pet, they can exhibit, biting and anxiety and other stress-related signs because they're simply not sleeping as well. So you want to mitigate that. So keeping them in an area where you can still interact with the pet, but you aren't disturbing the pet, is going to be really, really, really important. Same thing for birds. It's crucial for birds to get a good day and night cycle and a good amount of sleep. It is so, so, so important. Any animal that's deprived of sleep, like I said, is going to have behavioral issues, and a lot of times in our bigger birds, those behavioral issues can lead to severe injuries to you or someone in your family. So you want to make sure that your pet is able to get a full, good night's rest every night. Not just sometimes, every night. Some people will put cloths over their bird's cage for them to get rest. I don't know that I recommend that because I have seen evidence of the bird pulling the cloth in and ripping it up and potentially eating it or nesting with it, which can cause other behavioral issues. So it might be best to put the aviary or the cage or whatever somewhere that it is more secluded, or if you can, which would probably be the better option, would be to have another cage set in a different area of the house, completely quiet, completely kind of blocked off from the activity of the house, where a light can be turned off and this pet can get sleep. So make sure to research the species that you have, looking into seeing when their active hours are, and so that you're not just putting them in there and then locking them in there and they get no interaction. That's not what we want, but we do want them to have that good, consistent, I'm awake, I'm hanging out with my person, I'm doing my own things, I'm foraging, I'm playing, I'm whatever. Okay, now it's getting time for bed, I'm going to go into this cage and I'm going to go to sleep. So those things are very important to consider. What else can we touch on with sleep that is important? I mean, it's even important with things like fish. If you need to have, this is important. And it's important for fish, and it's important for all of the animals that live in our cage systems. So terrariums, cages, aviaries, tanks, anything like that. You should have a powerful enough light source that is consistent. So you want to have something that comes on at a certain amount of time, goes off at a certain amount of time, and it is very consistent. If you leave an animal in a cage that's dark all the time, they're not going to have a good way of knowing when they should be awake and they should be asleep. So make sure if you have a caged pet that you are making sure that they have access to light. It doesn't necessarily have to be one of my animals' cages just turned off. It doesn't necessarily have to be a over the cage light, like an LED or something like that, or UVB, UVA, unless they require it. If they're in a room that does get some natural sunlight, that should work just fine. Just make sure they're not in the direct part of the sun because they could overheat. But you want to make sure that it is consistent. So this will help them to get synced on to having that natural sleep cycle. So they'll know, oh, my light turned off. They'll start to naturally wake themselves up. So that's a good way also for my green tree python. That's how she also knows that it is time for her to wake up, is that her cage light in her cage will turn itself off. And then she doesn't get up right away, but I will see after a little bit she does start to become more active. And sometimes she even becomes a little more active right before that light does turn off. So they do sync to those light schedules. So make sure it's consistent and make sure it's enough light so that they know what is active during the daytime and what is nighttime. And just make sure that you help facilitate that with how you're keeping your pet and keeping your animal. Okay, so those are my 3 points that I just want to address on some common ways that I see that people could be neglecting certain things in their pets' lives. They're for the most part, they're pretty simple things that you can do some pretty simple changes to kind of help ensure that your pet is thriving, not just surviving. A lot of them have to do with, of course, the exotic pets because they are my favorite. And favorite animals to educate about. And I do think that there are things from those animals, even for dogs and cats, that, maybe you haven't considered. Do you have different forms of treats that you can give for enrichment? Do you have different types of toys for them? Are they getting overweight? Do you need to switch stuff up or change how they're exercising? And is your pet getting the adequate amount of sleep? For dogs and cats, it is something that, while they are covered more broadly for veterinary topics and just overall care, and most people know about their proper care, it is just something to consider. So these are just 3 things that I just want to make sure that you guys are taking into account, because it is really, really important for your animal's long-term health. And as much as I want to see all the pets at the vet clinics, because I love seeing my patients and the clients, I don't want to see you there all the time. I'd rather see you there for the yearly exam, hear that everything's going great and going well, and then send you on your merry way. So those are just some tips and tricks. I would love to hear about your animals and what you do for them, and maybe different forms of enrichment that you have that I haven't talked about, or different things that you do to help your pet get a good night's rest. Feel free to drop them in the comments. Go ahead and give this video a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me. I have some good videos coming up in the future. I have 2 that are still in the works that I just haven't fixed or edited yet. I have a video on a zoo externship that I'm doing, and if you should do one if you are in veterinary medicine, as well as looking at relationships and being in vet med and how those tend to work. So good couple things coming down the line there, but with that said, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and bye!